Great, and we're live. So welcome everybody to this remote interview. My name is Lisette and I'm interviewing people and companies doing great things remotely. And today on the line, all the way from Barcelona, I have Danny Page. Danny, thank you for being here.
Thank you, Lisette. You know, I always wanted to have a superpower, and I was hoping I would be able to fly, but instead it's collaboration, and that's okay. As I get older, I can accept that type of superpower.
Flying would be pretty cool
That would be
indeed, but
pretty
yeah,
sweet. You know?
the collaboration's here. So Danny, you are the Chief Revenue Officer at Distribute Consulting, and we're going to get into that. You are also a TV and radio host in the past. We're going to get into that.
Okay.
Super exciting.
Past life evaluation.
Yeah, past life, bringing skills forward, right, into new ways. Right, and you're the MC for Running Remote in Nomad City, which I just found out. So we're definitely going to get into that. But let's start with the first questions, which is, what does your virtual office look like? What do you need to get your work done?
Yeah, and I also love this format because there's video as well. And one of the things that I will say is my virtual office, I'm going to use a couple props here for those watching on video, which I would highly recommend. My virtual office consists of a couple things. One is an espresso. Two is a glass of agua con gas, as we say here, or sparkling water. And then my notebook and a nice set of multicolored pens. And once I have those components, right? Like and my laptop, obviously, that's kind of a duh. But once I have my espresso and my agua con gas, I can put myself in I can be in any place and put myself in that zone where I'm really ready to work and really ready to produce. Yeah. Does that suffice?
Yes, and I'm curious about the paper and colored pens, because that's not a virtual tool. So it is a tactile tool. So why that?
I think ideation happens the best when, and the way that you can produce that ideation and then retain what you've created the best is through writing. Right? That wasn't exactly a scientific explanation, but through actual writing. And for me, the way I'm able to additionally follow along what's happening in meetings and communicate in meetings is through taking relatively copious notes. And each color, I'm not type A at all, each color has a specific assignment and something that it means. So when I go back into my notes, they're very layered and coded, and I know, like, oh, this was, a type of concept that we want to produce in the short term from a conversation that happened on February 12th. Oh, it's the purple color. Boom, done. And then another color is like a quote from someone, and that certainly helps take me to the right place. I'll change where I work pretty frequently. I'll sometimes start in a cafe in the morning. There's so many beautiful cafes to work in Barcelona. And I will rotate between co-work spaces a little bit, but my co-work space here is BC Newt. It's run by one of my closest friends, and we just have this like wonderful kind of family atmosphere, but that can also be distracting at the same time. And then Lisette, I like to finish the day working from home, so it'll transition as long as I have my coffee and my pens. I'm pretty much set.
Okay, so changing spaces just based on, and sort of a tangential question, but how do you get yourself into flow? Like, a lot of people have trouble sort of getting started, and how do you start?
Yeah, I think being able to execute at a high level starts the night before. So I really like to lay out all of my clothes that I'll wear the next day. I normally go to the gym in the morning or go for a nice long walk. And it all starts the night before, really, by having my backpack ready to go, whatever, food or drink I'm going to take with me ready to go. And then as I start my day, I have, my series of personal principles I go through. I go and work out. And by the time that's done, I've taken an hour to get all the like less important stuff out, and then I'm ready to just like really think critically. And that's when I make my double espresso and open my bottle of sparkling water.
And just get to work.
Just go for it. Yeah.
Okay. Love it. And you are the Chief Revenue Officer at Distribute Consulting.
That's a big title.
That sure is.
Wow, that makes me sound way too serious. It's not true.
Yeah, but I would like to know, what is it that you guys do, because you are in the remote working space. So
Yeah, I mean, I work with the founder is obviously, an old friend of yours. You guys are like on the Mount Rushmore, right? Laurel Farr is the
Oh,
CEO and the
lovely.
founder, and you guys are, Hall of Famers, right? Like we're just all trying to emulate what you do.
Okay.
Distribute has evolved. Distribute has evolved in recent years from a company that would, help organizations convert into being virtual organizations. It's evolved from that into a strategy firm that really meets the needs of the remote work industry. Right now, we work with companies, we work with governments that are trying to build solutions to help, on the enterprise side, to help their clients adopt remote work. For governments, whomever is inhabiting the region that they are responsible for, to help those individuals adopt remote work. We help them with product development, with implementation, with sales and marketing. We help companies speak the language of remote work so that they can better service their clients, for example. And it's been so exciting to see this organization evolve. For Laurel, it was, I mean, she's been doing individual consulting for about 10 years, and she brought in a group of us. There's about 8 or 10 that work, within Distribute Consulting to align with as many, organizations as well that share this vision that this is really the future of work, and more and more people sort of share that vision every day, I think. So I'm super proud to be part of this group of thinkers at Distribute.
Yeah, it's super interesting. So I'm really curious. You're seeing a
Yeah.
lot of companies adopting remote work or helping companies adopting remote work. Why are they doing it? What is the driving force?
So I want to I'll take a step back, Lizette, and I think we're in like sort of remote work 2.0 or 2.2 or something along those lines. The big companies are adopting remote work. There's no doubt about that. But at the same time, what we're seeing is, I don't think we're seeing like the remote work superpower unfolding, especially in a lot of the bigger companies, because they're just saying, okay, you have a laptop, you can go home a couple days a week. But we know that if you build that results-driven culture and you inspire people, I shouldn't say inspire, you increase the level of trust in the workplace, and you really give them autonomy, like magical things happen. Massive companies aren't necessarily doing that yet, right? Like they're
Right.
listening to feedback from their their employees that want to work from home at least sometime. So I don't think we're into like the big, autonomous worker sort of revolution that I want to see happen. I think knowledge workers deserve more respect from their employers, and they deserve to be trusted. So I think that's coming up further down the line, but at the same time, baby steps, right? We can't
Right.
we can't do it all at once here.
And big
And I think
organizations are difficult to change, of course. So, right, you've got a culture, and remote work changes that. So
dramatically, and even small companies too don't want to see their culture change necessarily, right? Like a lot of the
right.
SMEs that we work with, keep maintaining that culture. I think for individuals, what's the biggest fear of working remotely? Isolation. For companies, what's the biggest fear of taking the organization remote? Is losing the culture. It's interesting because I think a lot of the SMEs that are deciding to work remotely are those with the strongest culture and those that are most in touch with their organization's culture, because they know it has to happen. So they're really trying to be on the offensive. We're working with some really fascinating companies of just a couple hundred people that say, hey, we need to do this now. And that's really exciting. The big companies are doing it, but what we're seeing more and more is that a lot of big companies and smaller companies are building products and tools for building products and tools for remote teams, and the clients themselves need help with the implementation, right? So what does our team need to look like to be able to use this tool? So that's a scenario where a lot of companies come to us and they say, hey, how do we help our client implement this tool at scale?
So that is interesting. What advice would you? I mean, how do you start with that?
Listen to what Laurel says.
Right. Just do it.
Yeah. I mean, I think.
No, but tool adoption companies it's like been for years and years and years, of course. In the beginning it was Microsoft Office and everybody just had to use it, whether you liked it or not, right? That was it. That was all you had. Now we have hundreds to choose from.
Right.
And so there's also the choice. But once you have one, how do you get everybody to use it?
Yeah, I mean, I think it comes back to communication within an individual team and specific feedback loops, right? Because if you are working remotely and a tool isn't working properly, equipping an organization with the proper communication practices and the proper communication structure, and then providing those feedback loops for when something isn't working, I think is really important. One of the things, again, I'm not the one necessarily consulting enterprises on virtual health transformation or transitions, but especially with smaller companies, for example, one of the things that I love to suggest is what I call like a communication alert system, right? So the expected response time for email, for Slack, if it's an international company, then a WhatsApp message. Hey, if you get a message on WhatsApp, you need to respond within 10 minutes. And then if there's really an emergency, you make a phone call. So I think that sort of communication alert system is one way to do it. I know I got a little off track there, but that's something I find really important and exciting.
Well, I do too. And actually I call it something different. So you say communication alert system.
Alert system.
So that's just to define like response times. How are you going to communicate with each other?
Exactly.
Those kind of things. Okay.
Because that's one of the biggest things is that happens so early is like, well, Joe's working, we have a work from home policy, but it's as needed. If your kid is sick and Joe's working at home and I sent him a Slack message and he didn't respond for 2 hours and I didn't know what to do. Well, if you have this policy in place, then if it was just a US-based company, you send a text message or an iMessage. If you're international, you send a WhatsApp, and then you call if you don't get a response. And putting those systems in place, I think, is absolutely paramount. But again, increasing the communication during any new tool adoption is just absolutely crucial and priceless.
How many companies have some sort of communication alert system in place that you see?
That's a great question. I don't think very many. Outside of email and Slack, there really aren't like expected response times as much, right? And the reason why I like a sort of alert system, especially in, let's say, those 150 to 200 person organizations, which is where my experience was greatest. I was VP of Ops for Study Soup, which completely distributed ed tech company. We scaled up to like 150 full-timers and 5,000 contractors. Really amazing company with really smart people that I continue to work with, but worked in a full-time role for 4 years. We built a pretty amazing distributed team in the Philippines, which I know is something maybe we'll talk about in a little bit here. And part of that working culture is to always respond to inquiries. And it got to the point where, just below the top management level of the company, which was like the founders and myself and the COO, all of our managers were all in the Philippines. They were all women, just coincidentally. And they would all want to respond quickly, despite the fact that they were working on, knowledge work projects, right? And I said, guys, we're going to start having a 2-hour daily Slack outage from 10 a.m. Pacific until 12 or 12:30. I do not want to hear from you, okay? You will be off of Slack. You need to focus and do not respond to me. Then we kind of like test each other, right? Where it's like, hey, but that's where we would need that alert system, right? Is like if something was broken, which Lisette, it happens every like 2 weeks, one issue. If something is broken, then I know I can call you on WhatsApp or so on and so forth.
Right.
So I think that's a great spot for it. And that's why, for me, that's one thing that makes remote work so powerful is the ability to do focused, isolated work. And that's another component that the big companies really need to recognize it's important about what we're doing, about what we're trying to build here.
Well, and indeed, and I think there was a survey a few years ago that asked people what their favorite style was, and most people wanted to work some sort of a hybrid style where they had some days in the office and some days at home, specifically for that reason, because they wanted to increase their productivity and they needed a place to focus, and the office was the impossible place to focus for certain people. Sometimes home is the impossible place to focus. It depends on which is set up which way. So that's why a lot of people say the future of work is remote. And I always think, well, actually, I think the future of work is choice, right? Like you want to choose.
Absolutely. Absolutely. People deserve the right. That's what I feel. They deserve the right to select what they want to do. Work as you want it is the way that I like to put it. And I think
Yeah,
we're
work where
totally
you're
aligned.
most productive.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
like if you're most productive in the office, like for instance, my husband tried working from home for a year several years ago,
Okay.
hated it, went
Really?
back to the office. He hated it. I mean, for me, it's a
That's so
dream. Like if I
funny.
never
Yeah,
have to
yeah,
leave my home,
yeah,
great.
yeah,
But okay, one thing that you said though that I'm really curious about
yeah,
is with Study Soup, you
yeah.
said you scaled it to quite a large size. What if 150 full-time, 5,000 contractors? Did I get
Contractors. Yeah. So our product, pretty amazing. I love our founders. Marketplace for university students to sell their notes to their classmates. Like, wow. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. So our contractors are our note takers. Massive. We had a huge marketing team every semester of about 400 that would go on campus and generate leads for us. I mean, I swear of this kind, it's probably one of the most successful any startups built in the US. Because think about how do you get 400 college students in a 2-week period to generate like 35,000 leads? Like that's not very, all remote, right? So we
Amazing.
had, yeah, so through that marketing team, like the remote hierarchical structure we had to build was really, really difficult. But our note takers, of course, are all remote, distributed across about 500 different campuses. Their level of contribution would be like, Uber and its number of drivers. Now the type of contribution is far different and so on and so forth. So I don't want to make it sound like we had like 5,000 people on Slack contributing on a daily basis. But at the same time, the note takers had to upload documents and had to deliver a specific result for our business to be able to, really be to really function.
Right. And so in terms of scaling then, what were some of the issues that you ran into along the way?
Yeah, I mean, I think that at a very early stage, one of the first things we did to be able to scale the company was, well, I guess I'll take a quick step back. We all know how college students are in the US specifically, right? They're not exactly going to jump out of bed and say, okay, I'm going to post my notes for this website. So they need a little nudge sometimes, they need just a little push. And we went to the Philippines and built like a typical call center and everybody worked in the office. And after like 6 months, we're like, wait, we're a distributed company. Why in the world would this team not be working from home? And one of the things that made it easier to scale is that we just built, as I said, a team of incredible leaders and managers that embraced remote work and really started living our remote work philosophy. That team made it so much easier to scale in the way we did. But again, the biggest problem was, and it's something that Cal Newport talks about a lot in Deep Work, which is like what Slack does, and really in his whole philosophy, what Slack does and what our connected culture does is it gives us this feeling of gratification by quickly solving simple problems. And
right.
It gives us a sort of false sense of accomplishment. And the biggest thing that I had to do was for the entire organization, rethink that. At a very early stage, we were even looking at like who sent the most Slack messages. Like this was super early startup stage. It was the antithesis of the level of productivity that we wanted to have. So to me, that was the biggest problem, because the bigger the organization, really the more that you're going to have those constant interruptions coming through. So that was just a massive theme in terms of scaling for any startup. I will say that in terms of full-time contributions, 150 is like the ideal number, right? Like the scientists say that's kind of that once you go beyond 150, then you need to start splitting into smaller groups. It's something Malcolm Gladwell talks about a lot. And so for us to have stopped at 150, because that's a number of people that you can really like remember in any sort of social ecosystem, for us to stop at 150 was like, that was about it. I think it was all right.
Right. And it's good too, because it's good to know, like, it's not going to grow forever. Sometimes the goal is let's get to here. And this is the goal. It doesn't have to become this multi-billion,
Totally.
global. Yeah. It's okay to have just enough. Right.
Yeah.
I mean,
yeah.
This emphasis on constant growth, I think really puts a real burden on some companies where it doesn't need to be there. Like it's good enough for what it does. And then just stay there.
Yeah, and I mean, it comes back to just sort of the outlook on life too, right? Do we in our modern world spend enough time thinking, what do I really want? And if I want to grow a company to 100 million, like, why do I really want that? And that was one of the other things we always did, was challenge our team to come up with that why and integrate it into the company culture. So it was a exciting time.
I can imagine. It sounds really sounds like something I needed in college. Where were you guys when I was at university?
You're a note seller though, right? You're not a note buyer. You're way too organized to be a note buyer.
I don't know what. Yeah, maybe in college I would have been a note buyer, and then I turned into
okay.
maybe college is
buyer.
different.
I'm a buyer. Yeah.
So I'm really curious. You are the MC for Running Remote and Nomad City, two very huge, two of the biggest, I think the biggest conferences on remote work in the world. So I'd love to hear how did you get this involvement? And this ties into your sportscaster background, which we should get into. And then also, why are who's coming to these events and why are they coming? So I want to kind of dive into all that. So first, how did you get this MC?
Sheer persistence and begging, I mean, obviously networking with great people like Nacho Rodriguez at Nomad City, and also Laurel Farr, who helped build the agenda for Nomad City. That was the first, and I did that in November. This will be my first time emceeing Running Remote, and it's so fun to work with Liam and Igor and that entire team. I have an excellent co-host in Cassie Torresillas as well for Running Remote. So the two conferences are distinctly different. First of all, for the Running Remote group, brilliant idea to bring this from Bali to Austin, bring it to the US. And, I just think it changes the level of company executive that can attend. And I mean, this roster is just star-studded. Greg Kaplan, Remote Year, Wade Foster, Zapier. I mean, those are just a couple of the sort of name drops. So I think that will be just one of the greatest coming togethers of remote work leadership that we've seen. For Nomad City is really interesting because, first of all, the Canary Islands are amazing. Like, I just love it down there. And it is based on its timing. It sort of puts a bow. It's in early November. It puts a bow on what did we learn this year and what are we going to do next year. And there are two tracks for Nomad City. There's definitely like the remote exec track, and you have a lot of executives from Europe, of course. And then there's the more nomad freelancer track. But Lizette, here's the thing, is that someone that is a digital nomad and someone that is working remotely as a freelancer, they are so massively capable of building a company because of how resourceful they've had to be. So I think we found, especially on the keynote day, so many people from the freelancer track say, hey, listen, like, I'm not running a remote organization now, but I feel like I'm probably going to be one day, and I learned so much. And that was like one of the things that really, really was exciting to me, that like the tracks intermingled on the last day, and we were able to provide value really on both sides, I think.
So then who are the folks coming to Running Remote? What are people coming to get out of that?
Yeah, I mean, I think especially this year, because it's in the US, we're really lifting the hood on how the biggest and best remote companies are run. Automatic, Zapier, Buffer. We're going to really be able to demonstrate how they do it. I find, by the way, maybe there'll be like a Hollywood movie someday or something, maybe not that, but I think that this generation of people ops executives of these 100 to 150 first big distributed companies, let's say big being above 150 to 200 people, I think they are just innovators in the HR space. They have to figure out time zone sync. They have to figure out salary bands. They have to figure out building a company culture across dozens of cultures. I mean, what the HR leadership has done at some of those companies is just so innovative and phenomenal. And I'm looking forward to connecting with a lot of those people.
Especially given all the different laws out there based on who, and like paying people in their various currencies. Goodness. And, like in the US, your company pays for the healthcare, but in Europe, you pay for the healthcare. It's navigating that landscape is crazy. Yeah.
Can you imagine? Thank goodness I'm not in people ops.
Yeah. Seems like we'll say it's a puzzle. It's okay.
Yeah.
So then let's get to your sportscaster pass, because I think that's super interesting.
Past life.
Past life. But I bet it really helps you emceeing these
Oh,
conferences, of
absolutely.
course.
Absolutely.
So,
I remember like my favorite TV job that I did was with the network in LA that has the Laker games. It was called Time Warner Sports Network. And we would do, California American football is huge. It's like second biggest to Texas. And we would do the California football championships. And basketball too. And I would do like the in stadium, halftime show in between games with like 4 games in a row. So, or if it was basketball, it was 6 games in a row.
oh
And
my
that meant
gosh.
that we were on from 8:30 in the morning until 10:30 at night. Hey, it's halftime. Let's go to Danny for the analysis. It was so exhausting. So people, ahead of Nomad City are like, hey, are you going to be able to do this agenda from like 9 to 6? And I was like, yes, this is simple. I don't even have to wear makeup. Maybe I should, but I don't even have to wear makeup. I don't have to listen to a producer in my ear the entire time.
Right.
But what an amazing way to come full circle. And I loved that industry. I felt like I wasn't able to do enough critical thinking and like solve problems. So I love like what we're doing now, and being able to communicate in a way that's not necessarily about, and by the way, I covered so many people that are stars in the NFL and the NBA now, for example, but being able to communicate in the way that the people in our space really are changing the world. Not that those people don't, right? They provide entertainment to tens and hundreds of millions. I interviewed David Beckham once. That was like the coolest moment of my, yeah, nice guy.
Cool.
But to be able to introduce people that really are part of our movement is just super special. I love it.
So, what is the trick then for you in terms of when you're announcing these games? What are you, as somebody who doesn't know anything about sportscasting or what people do, what is it that you're focused on? Are you just trying to describe to people who can't see what's going on, or what is it that you're
telling a story? Really, you're telling a story. You're understanding everyone's individual story. And really, one of my first mentors, I don't know if he would recognize himself as a mentor to me, but he was. Normally a mentor is going to be someone in your same field, right? But one of my first mentors is Pete Carroll, who is now the head coach of the Seattle Seahawks. And he was the coach at USC when I was a student journalist at USC. And I remember my senior year in a press conference, I asked like what was a pretty thought-provoking question. Coach Carroll pulled me aside afterward. ESPN was like waiting to do an interview with him. He pulled me aside and he's like, hey, I want to tell you what makes a great journalist. And he talked to me for 10 minutes and we built this amazing relationship about what makes a great journalist. And he says, I'm answering the same questions from reporters every day. I want people that ask thought-provoking questions. And what you do is you unearth new parts of a team's story, a coach's story, a player's story. And then you tell that story with the game as a backdrop, really. And I think that that's what makes the greats in sports commentary who they are. And I think that in conferences, maybe not the MC or the host, but the individual speakers, you want to really tell that story and gather as much information as possible ahead of time.
Well, it also what comes to mind when you say that is actually as a manager or as a leader in an organization, being able to unearth the individual stories and to be able to pull it together and align a team in a way. I can see that as also being, it's a communication skill in your toolbox.
Yeah, and working remotely or the future of work, I think allowing individuality is like such an important part of the way companies should be composed going forward. And like, non-millennial managers would say, oh, it's a millennial thing. They want to feel special. But like, if you're defining your office and maybe even your work hours and when you're going to travel, like we have to celebrate the individual, in my opinion. Again, knowledge workers have worked really hard to get to where they are. They've invested a lot of money. And let's in as many ways as possible celebrate the individual instead of like, okay, here's your cubicle where you can like put up some pictures and such. And yeah, let's celebrate everyone's story in an organization, and allowing them to work as they want, right, Lisette? Allowing them to work as they want really facilitates that.
And so, and I know I'm over time again, but dang, I have all these questions.
We're having a blast. Having a blast.
I just have this concept of true autonomy and giving people autonomy, allowing them to be the professionals we hired them for. What do you think is in the way of leaders doing that? What's the fear based on?
I don't really know. Well, no, we fear what we don't understand. right? And what we don't see right in front of us. And when someone's working remotely, like we don't see them, we don't understand what they're doing. And to me, that's one of the hardest things. I also really focus on what I call socially responsible outsourcing, building teams in the Philippines for mainly small and medium enterprises in the US that in many cases have never had remote workers, that have never hired anyone globally. But and these teams certainly have that fear. But you put in the proper results-based structure, you build proper communication practices, you establish some trust and camaraderie, and it doesn't really matter where anyone is based. We're all going to have that fear initially. I think when we all started working remotely for a company, we were afraid. But if we're able to do that across the Pacific Ocean quite easily with companies that have never had remote workers before, then you can do it anywhere with anyone.
Right. So before we go, I really think it's important to talk about this concept of socially responsible outsourcing. So I'd love to do that. So what does socially irresponsible outsourcing look like?
So I don't love the outsourcing companies. And I mentioned the Philippines a few times. Like if you've ever been there, if you've ever worked with people from there, this is just an incredibly beautiful group of human beings. They are so family first. They are so responsible. They are so kind. Their English is exceptional. They're in touch with American culture. They're just wonderful people, And to me, outsourcing has been great for the Philippines, right? Like since about 2003, it's been phenomenal. Like it's brought a whole other level of industry to a very impoverished nation. But at the same time, you have really difficult working conditions. I just hired a woman. She is exceptional. She left like a senior manager role to work for a mid-sized, small U.S. company, great company, but about 60 people. She left a senior manager role to come work for this small company in the U.S. because she was commuting 2 hours each direction. She has 5 children.
Wow.
They're so family driven, and she is absolutely loving this transition. So that's just one story I wanted to tell briefly, but I don't think the companies, maybe they give back a little bit to the community, but they really don't care about 2 things that I find being important in socially responsible outsourcing, which is, to me, there's this 4-pointed benefit structure. Okay. One is to the talent who you're hiring. They get to work from home. They spend more time with family. They save on commuting costs. They find their job more enriching. For the company, actually, outsourcing companies mainly have lifetime contracts, right? Where you hire a certain number of seats, people come and go, and you take a part of that person's salary basically forever. We like to have 12, 18-month contracts where we really just teach the company how to build a remote team, how to hire globally, and then, hey, you all go enjoy the benefits of that. So those are the 2 main benefits you normally want to see, right? Talent in the company. Then it's really important to the place you outsource from to reinvest in that local market. And for us, that I come from an education background. Everybody in my family's in education. For us, that's an education. So e-learning programs and hardware scholarships, if you will, for people to join, the digital workforce in the Philippines. We're even looking at building like a primary school potentially sometime in 2021. It's relatively pretty inexpensive to do. And then Lizette, the kicker, the 4th point of that is that if you're properly integrating people into a company, we can destroy so many misconceptions about how people are different across different cultures. Like that's my why, is to redefine the social dynamic that underlies the global workforce. Like that is my why. And I had a virtual assistant in Serbia like 5 years ago, amazing woman. She said, Danny, the earth is a village, right? Like we're all so similar. And that's why I call this brand we're building The Village. And you wouldn't think of an outsourcing company to be called The Village, right? I know that's like super millennial and touchy-feely of me, but really we want to bring people together globally under this banner of what we would call socially responsible outsourcing. So that's kind of the new project. We've got 4 companies right now and just loving it. It's just so fun.
Yeah, I can imagine. And I really like this idea of giving back to the place that you're outsourcing to, as just a matter of this is how we do business. Right. Well, I think a lot of people just simply overlook it, like, oh, I've got some really good talent over in here, and then we think no further. But actually taking that next step to Yeah, and I think the people that live there or the people that you're hired from there will also, I mean, that's where you create loyalty to your company, right? Is you put a little heart back.
Exactly. And if your why is stronger than your profit margins, good things will happen. And I think that's what we're trying to do, specifically in that space.
Yeah, and the shift that I've really enjoyed over the last few years is seeing that people are building companies without the focus on profit. Like profit is important to a point, and then there's something else that becomes important after profit. And I think I really like that we're seeing that focus now, where people are like, I've got enough money, I'd like to do something else.
Mission driven. Yeah,
right. Mission purpose driven. Yeah, like making a difference. Yeah, or same thing.
I think we are. I think we all are.
Love it. Okay, so I've got two final questions for you.
Great.
One is, what is advice that you would give for people who are just starting out? Maybe people who are trying to find a remote job or have never worked remotely. How would you advise them to start?
Sure. I just did I was in South Africa and just did a couple remote work talks about how South Africans can start working remotely, one in Cape Town and one in Johannesburg. And the biggest advice that I gave is it really starts from within, right? Finding what you want in life and fulfillment comes from inside out, not outside in. Like the job's not going to change your life. You're going to create the mentality that's going to get the job. So I think in remote work, remote managers and entrepreneurs are so accessible, Lisette, like on LinkedIn and just in general, we all are accessible as a community. And I think that the first thing you have to do is define who you are, what you want to do, what your specialty is, what you offer, and then who you want to do that with, and if that's you want to be a product manager for Zapier, that you can do it. You have to ensure you have the drive and the skill set for that, and then just go out and network with the right people. Again, remote leadership is extremely accessible. So I think it's who you are, what you want, and then who you're going to do it with, and that type of growth comes from within. For those that are just that do have their remote their way of generating income remotely already set, I think surround yourself with people. Like, don't get too isolated. It was one of the problems being back, in the winters before I moved to Barcelona full time. I'd be at my parents' house in Southern California for a couple months, and I had a car, but at the same time, I wasn't living this like mobile European life that I do now. Right? Like, get out, walk around, see different people. Like, especially in the US, you can get super isolated. Get out and surround yourself with people, and if you really can, get out and see the world. And I did that a few years, sort of nomading, and that really made it all worthwhile.
Changes everything.
Yeah.
So can go to, that's a whole other conversation.
That's oh my gosh.
Just do it. Just trust us and do it.
Just do it.
So the last question is, if people want to learn more about you, where's the best place to find you and interact with you online?
Yeah, I mean, I would say if you go to Danny Page, DANNYPAGE.co, not .com, that was already taken. It just routes to my LinkedIn page, and just add me on LinkedIn. Like, that's the easiest thing to do is just connect with me on LinkedIn for our various, operations. We have landing pages and so on and so forth, like Go to Distribute, The Village as well. You can find us that way, but I would just say, let's connect on LinkedIn. It's just again, like, we need to be accessible. That's how I was able to network within our business, was just accessibility. And I'd like to present a similar approach. Yeah,
it's amazing what you can do with just LinkedIn and Twitter these days.
I love it. I love it. I'm not popular enough for Twitter. Like, I've got to get to like your status to be able to like really have an impact on Twitter.
Also, I'm starting to wonder how much is Twitter. I mean, it's like a troll farm. Also, on the one hand, it's really great to connect. On the other hand, it's a total troll farm. So
totally.
It's both.
I'll once I'm like really famous, then I'll be on Twitter and I'll be
because then it won't matter anymore.
Right.
Troll me all you want. I'm famous.
Right. I'm here. I've made it.
Danny, thank you so much for your time today, and for going over. You had I took like copious notes.
Oh wow! I really am honored. Thank you.
No, I have lots to say. So I really appreciate your time today. Thank you so much. All right, everybody. Until next time, be powerful.